So if you're like me and everyone else here at Rant, we all love cars to the level of we want to own multiple cars because we just love the vehicles for what they are. That includes buying project cars. With the heyday of car meets out in public and some of these bigger meets now being shut down, what does it look like trying to buy a project car here in 2025? How's it going, everyone? My name is Nick Lanza, and if you're new around here, this is Rant, and we do builds of our own. We have reviews of some of the products we work with, and we have candid conversations around cars and car culture. So if that sounds like a good time to you, please hit the subscribe button and let's dive in. You see, here on this channel, we've actually owned nearly 15 different project cars over the lifespan of the channel as of right now. With everything from cheap Hondas to expensive Supras, we've seen and messed with a lot of different vehicles, predominantly in the Japanese space. And even over the short amount of time that our channel's been around, we can definitely say with great certainty that there is a vast difference between buying a project car now versus when we got started. You see, way back in 2016 and 17, when we were really getting rolling, there was a boom of car culture. We had a lot of big names in the space, and thus there was a lot of cars that were just being snapped up left and right for projects. And you have to remember that before this, there was the whole cash for clunkers thing that had happened, which really took a lot of good potential project cars completely out of the market. So with a very large pool that was cut in half and very rapidly disappearing, people were trying to get into the buying craze and put up their own items to try and cash in on this newfound car enthusiasm thing. This is around the same time that we here on the East Coast were able to pick up not one but two 240 SXs for $1,000 for both of them. One being a parts car and one being a running coupe. You may remember this from season 2. I'm a much younger and skinnier man in that sequence, and these cars were of course Ishmaels. Then we flash forward a little bit further along, and I was able to get a pristine, seemingly, blue Lexus IS300 for $5,000 with less than 76,000 miles on the odometer. That was a really good price, especially considering it was a manual with the factory LSD. This thing could drift, and I actually did pull it off a couple times, and that last time kind of really ruined the magic for me. Of course, we had other vehicles like my Mighty Max that I got for around 2,000 bucks. The Celica, my Pajero could even be considered a project car, even the Laurel. These were all truly cool and unique vehicles, and ones that have their own cult followings and dedicated fan bases. But here we are now. We've seen a huge increase of everything in our life. People are talking about inflation being down, but the reality is we're still nowhere near where we were, with over 20% increases on everything, some things even as high as 60 to 80%. What that means is that financially it is much more difficult to get into cars as it is now versus when we got started. So what does that mean for you if you wanted to get into one? The truth is that some of these cars are just not worth what the owners are trying to sell for. Most of them are trying to capitalize on getting some money to kind of keep up on bills, get out of stuff and get into something new, or better still, trying to profit somehow, which is basically unheard of in this line of work. As it sits, as much as I loved my Mitsubishi Mighty Max, I'm actually going to be letting it go due to some significant life changes that I myself am going through. Not just with trying to move to Italy in the next couple years, but just with relocation in general. So here I am, a more motivated seller. I'm wanting to get rid of the thing. I'm probably going to post it up for around $1,000. The chassis is in good shape. It needs a new diff because it's just an old diff with over 250,000 miles on it as far as we know. And there's no engine or transmission because we had started the project and kind of left it where it was after the second episode of Galahad. I would love to be able to finish it and put the Windsor in it and make it cool and do the whole thing, but the reality is I just don't foresee me being able to do this with the direction that my life is now heading in. So $1,000 just to get rid of it is pretty average, but like this truck, it's gonna take a ton of work. But maybe you have someone like John who's looking to potentially sell his Lancer. It doesn't need a lot of work. It had a lot of work done to it. Things like clutches and brakes and sound systems and intake systems and suspension. It's had a lot of stuff put into it. it's in a much more put together state than most other cars of its caliber. This then leads to a question of, what does he sell that for? And of course, he's gonna want a bit more money, probably something closer to around the $3,000 to $4,000 range. Even though it's a more commuter-driven car and less of an enthusiast-driven car, it's still something to be considered. It's in better shape, won't take as much work, might need it for customizations, if you know what I mean, but otherwise could literally drive the way it sits. Then there's people that are in Ian's position. They're looking to sell off their project car because they just don't feel like doing it anymore. They're burnt out on the project. They want to get out from underneath it. They're done. Over the last several months, Ian has been selling off parts of his car little by little, even though he would love to just sell the whole chassis in one fell swoop. He wants to try something new, maybe get into old Beamers, things like that, and just start afresh. He's looking to make money on the parts that are in it because they haven't had any real road use. Less than 50 miles at best of actual use. People that fall into Ian's category are people that are just trying to get the money back that they spent. And the reality is, as he himself has learned as well through this whole process, it's likely never going to happen that way. You're going to get as good as you could possibly get, but not great. And lastly, you have the fully set up project car. This person is done with the vehicle. They don't want to work with it anymore. They have gone their full course and enjoyed it as best as they can, and it's time for them to move on to something new. It's in running driving shape, and anyone could get into this and immediately be happy with where it sits currently, with maybe a few changes to upgrade it farther if they so chose. People in this category are going to want money. Why? Because they're not in a hurry to let it go. With the range of spectrum being from getting out from under it to we're kind of wanting something different, to I need to sell stuff to make my money back, to the last category being unmotivated sellers, there's got to be some wisdom applied when trying to buy a project car. You need to understand 3 key components. 1, your budget. 2, what you're capable of handling as far as a project goes. And 3, your lifestyle. With the budget side of things, you have to consider how much you're able to spend to not only buy the car, but insure it, transport it if it doesn't run, and even better still, registration costs, things like that with your local municipalities. We all know those guys that are like, oh, we don't put insurance on nothing. And what happens at the end of the day? They have a completely totaled vehicle that they can't get a penny out of because it's scrap metal. Don't be those people. Get insurance for your cars. Even if they don't run, a freak thing could happen and a tree fall on your car, or like in my case, a tree fell on my house and scared the daylights out of me about a month ago. Skipping to the last one, your lifestyle. Does this thing suit you as a person? For me, I'm really big on my sedans and having room for people in my car because I like people. I like to go places with people, and I like to be able to move bigger objects with my stuff because I just do it a lot. I buy and sell stuff all the time. It was one of my side hustles for a long time to buy and sell antiques and vintage items. I still kind of do that on the side from time to time, so having a bigger vehicle to move those things is important to my lifestyle. And that included my project cars. I don't know if you ever noticed, but I basically never owned a dedicated coupe unless it was also a hatchback. And of course, the big one, what are you capable of handling? To give you a great example, I knew that I was in over my head with the Evo once it got here and I really started getting into all the problems that it had from the sketchy dealership down there in Florida. More importantly, I was game for the amount of work it was going to take to make the Evo mine. And over the course of 6 to 7 years, it truly became part of who I was as a person in a lot of ways, because when I traveled places, people knew me as, hey, you're the yellow Evo guy. It took thousands of dollars to develop this car into what I envisioned. It took tons of man hours and blood, sweat, and tears to do the work to make this thing what it became. And that's something that you have to consider when getting into these project cars as of late. You see, a lot of these cars that we love are losing the support over time due to much more restrictive laws, thanks to things like environmental protection agencies, depending on where you live. And moreover, even the municipality is refusing to allow you to register these cars moving forward. Many states are still seeing the kickback against Japanese imported K cars, as well as even cars that are American made but just too old to pass any sort of emission standard in given states like California. These are all headaches you're gonna have to deal with when it comes to what are you capable of dealing with? What at the end of the day can you afford to do and can manage when it comes to your stress level? Truthfully, with where I'm at in my life right now, my mopeds and the Pajero are all I can take anymore. The mopeds are smaller, I can store them in a shed, no problem. And better still, the stipulations around being able to use them and ride them mean that I can enjoy these things without having to worry about insurance on them, but also don't have to worry about any sort of special classifications, things that I need to renew every year. I can just enjoy them for what they are. And if something doesn't work, it's maybe $100 for that part and I'm good to go. Whereas with a car, I could be spending north of $1,000 nowadays for some of the same said parts. So in conclusion, if you will, you need to know what kind of seller you're interacting with. But then you need to also take a look at your own life and see what are you capable of handling. If you get this vehicle, if you needed to use it for anything other than pleasure, would it accommodate your lifestyle? Would you be able to live life with this car if it became the only car that you had? And better still, can you even afford to live with just this car? Or will you need to make significant changes in your life in order for this dream, this vision that you have to happen? These are all very significant things that you have to consider that I, as a now 30-year-old man, can appreciate when someone comes to my door asking, hey, is the 240 for sale or is the Mighty Max up for grabs? And with all that said, I hope this comprehensive look into buying a project car can really help you think more about what your next steps might be, especially considering our money just isn't worth what it used to be. And with that said, let us know what your thoughts are down in the comments section, and we would love to be able to continue to converse with you there, and we'll see you guys next time. God bless y'all, and peace. You ready, buddy?
That's dope. Hi, me. Look, it's me. It's recording. Bud, you gonna have fun in the new race car?
It's been such a long time.